I'm going to show you exactly what metrics you want to pay attention to when it comes to optimizing your campaigns and the actions you can take to improve those metrics. I'm talking open rates, click rates, placed order rates. This is a live account where I'm going to fully break down how these things work. Anyway, my name's Gavin. I run an email and SMS marketing agency. You're going to notice in this video that I talk about a school community. That is because this is part of some training that I released within my school community, whereby you get full training on everything email and SMS, as well as weekly calls with me. Anyway, there's a link in the description. Check that out. Let's get into the video. Okay, in today's video, I'm going to show you how to analyze campaign data and actually how to figure out how to but maneuver the numbers that you are seeing within the reporting dashboard. So let's quickly get on that. Turn the lighting on a little bit better. Fantastic. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at our campaigns. We're going to click campaigns, and this is where we can see all of our data. Now, in a very snapshot view, typically you're going to see open rate, click rate, placed order rate, okay? Now, it's really important to note that these metrics aren't necessarily an indication of the overall account health, nor are they an indication of how effective the subject line is. This could be an indication of those two things, as well as the health of the list that you're sending it to, list or segment that is. These are open rates of the percentage of people who received the email. And so, for example, I could easily manipulate open rates by sending to 30-day engaged and probably get significantly better engagement rates, but lower overall amount of people opening and amount of people clicking. What you're looking for here is finding a sweet spot within these engagement metrics of how many people you can reach, okay, and get to open, and also maintain your open rates as a percentage. For example, if I send to the entire database, I would probably get about 15% open rates, and my amount of people opening would probably be the same, about 1,700 people. But if I tightened up my segmentation and I only sent to 2,000 people, I could probably get 70% open rates, but less people overall opening the email. What you're trying to do is trying to find a sweet spot between the engagement metrics and how many people are actually engaging with your emails. Really important to pay attention to the deliverability module of the campaigns to actually get an indication of what we're talking about here. But let's drill in a little bit further into depth about what is actually being displayed within these emails. Open rates, click rates, placed order rates, revenue. Now, the first thing that I can see here is a relatively low placed order rate. The way to influence this is doing two things. Number one, adjusting the segment that we actually are targeting. If we're getting about 34% open rates, I'm probably going to shrink my engagement window to about 90 days. So I was currently using 120-day engaged. I'm going to shrink that engagement window and go to 90 days until I can get 40% open rates. That's typically what I'm aiming for, 40%. Because 40% is roughly a good amount of people are going to be engaging as a number, but also it's a good reputational number as well to influence where my emails land from a deliverability perspective. Click rate. Oh yeah, this also means segmentation. It also means that the subject line itself could not be super compelling either. Always good. Rules for subject lines, personalize them if possible. And if you have an incentive or a discount within those emails, make sure you lead with a number, okay? So if we say something like, if we have a 25% off sale, you want to lead with 25% off sale. You want to lead with a number. It's a pattern interrupt in the inbox. This is going to help increase the overall open rates. Click rates, we can see this is relatively low, 0.78. Ideally, you want to be reaching about 1 to 2% click rates. So when I see this, I think two things. Number one, offer wasn't compelling enough. So if you have not already played with the offer in the email, make sure you play with that a little bit. Number two, call to action was not high enough within the email. So let's take a look at the email and see if we can diagnose this properly. Number three is also the segmentation might be a little bit off here. Great. This, I don't see any problems with this. Shop the sale, call to action is super clear, straight up the top. So there is not really going to be an issue with the actual email itself. One of the reasons that click rates go down in emails is largely because the button is below the fold and the offer is not clearly within the front of the email. If I scroll down here, I can see this is all above the fold. I can see that there's clearly a call to action above the fold. I do not have to scroll to see the button. So I know that the click isn't the issue, right? Probably means two things. Number one, the actual offer isn't compelling enough, 20% off. Or number two, the audience isn't high enough quality to warrant it. And I'm actually slowly leaning towards there being an audience problem here because we're seeing things like open rates not super high for 120-day engaged and click rates not super high. Placed order rate, listen, this is really hard to tell. This is going to vary from email to email. Really what you want to be focusing on here is, this is going to be so skewed based off of the offer that you're sending here. So if you're sending like in isolation, like if you're sending a split test with 2 different offers, this is the metric that you want to pay attention to. Really quickly, sorry to interrupt the video. I just want to tell you something really cool that we've started doing with Inbox. I've actually created a school community where I teach you anything and everything I know about email and SMS marketing, from really advanced campaign strategies to how to simply set up your Klaviyo account, all the way to building really, really cool automations for the back end of your e-commerce store. Whether you're a business owner trying to learn how to do email marketing or an email marketer trying to learn how to become a better email marketer, there is a link in the description to this school community where I teach you everything I know. Check it out, it's worthwhile. Book a call to have a chat with me to see if you're a right fit for the community, and if you are, I'd love to get you in there. Anyway, sorry for interrupting your video, let's get back to it. When you do split tests in emails, you have to figure out what you're trying to isolate for and what variable you're trying to test. So if we were to do a split test for open rates, the only thing we should really be testing is send time in campaigns. Do not split test subject lines when it comes to campaigns. The reason being, when you're running a test, you want to be able to take the learnings from the test and implement it into future campaigns down the road. And if we do a split test for campaigns and we use a subject line as our test, we might learn the winning variation with statistical certainty. However, we will not be able to take that learning and implement it into a future campaign. Why? Because every single campaign is typically different. So how do we take the learnings from one campaign subject line split test and implement it into another? We do not. The learning that we can get and implement into future campaigns is the send time to figure out when the open rates are the best. Okay? Send time can also be great at figuring out placed order rates. Now, if we want to test for what's going to help us influence the click rate numbers, we can do 2 things. We can test design after having tested the send times from an open rate perspective. We can test the design of the email, the copy of the email, the positioning of the buttons in the email. Those are the variables that we can test to influence the click rate, because we can implement those learnings on a consistent month-by-month basis. Oh, we found a button that's colored red does better than what's colored blue. Fantastic. We learned that increased our click rates by XYZ%. All future emails are now going to have blue colored call to actions. You kind of see where I'm going? Obviously, that's a very basic term. Placed order rate, the thing that you're going to be looking at here in terms of what influences the placed order rate is largely going to be the content of the emails, what products you focus on, and offers that you have in the emails. So if you want to take a look at, for example, a test of like, does 20% off do better than 25% off? You would think that 25% off would do better. You run that test, right? And then you can see what email results in a higher placed order rate. If 25% off didn't, then you're definitely going to run 20 because you're essentially protecting your margins. Those are the variables that you're going to take, or rather test. Another important thing that you can see within this deliverability report here is the actual amount of emails that get delivered. This is how many emails actually go into people's inboxes. It's important that you pay attention to this every now and then. For the most part, if you've done it once and you're getting like results like this, you don't need to look at it on a month-by-month basis. Like we know with 99.9%, this basically means our emails are being delivered and no one is rejecting us. We can also look at deliverability, get a further breakdown here, and it shows us from a benchmarking perspective where we're sitting. Listen, I really only pay attention to, when it comes to deliverability, these 3 metrics here. If your bounce rate is high, you need to make sure that you are excluding anybody who's bounced in the last 30 days. Really easy. Just create a segment of people who've bounced in the last 30 days, exclude them from the campaigns. And unsubscribes, this is naturally going to like reduce as time goes on. Listen, if you're having like more than 1% unsubscribe rates, you have an issue, get on the weekly call and we can talk about it. Same again for spam complaint rates. If we have an issue like this is actually an issue, get on the call and we can talk about it. It's usually because these high unsubscribe and high spam complaint rates are usually for 2 reasons. 1, the account hasn't emailed people in a long time, right? 2, you're re-engaging a large portion of the database who you haven't actually talked to in a long time. And 3, bonus 1, I know I said 2, 3, the list of people that are in the database haven't actually opted into email. It's usually one of those 3 things that causes this. And then I have a full segment on this in the deliverability module of the class. So make sure you follow that. For the most part, from a data perspective, that's all you really need to pay attention to here. If you have deliverability issues, you can actually see which provider is providing you bad deliverability issues by looking at this. And you can just see, okay, where are all of our bounces coming from, for example. But for the most part, we can diagnose this in the calls if you do have like a serious issue with this. And this also just gives you like an indication of where your deliverability sends or sits on a domain basis, right? Those are pretty much the metrics that you need to pay attention to with campaigns. So I just really want to recap though, because the important bit here is if you want to play with open rates, you want to mess around with send times. That's when you want to mess around with open rates, right? If you want to do tests. If you want to mess around with click rates, you want to play around with design, layout of the email, right? And then if you want to play around with placed order rates, you want to play around with the offer that's in the email and the products and the content of the copy that you discuss within that email. Those are the three variables that you're going to want to test within that. For example, placed order rate, you're not really going to be playing around with subject lines to influence the placed order rate. When you think about the email, subject line encourages the open, okay? Design and copy encourage the click, right? Placed order, this is largely going to come down to the offer that was in the email, okay? As well as your website. Your website plays a massive factor in influencing this number here. So you'll have higher placed order rates if your website's optimized, okay? That's typically how we do it, guys. AOV, or revenue per recipient. Listen, I largely disregard revenue per recipient. For example, broaden your definition of engaged here. So send to significantly more people, generate more revenue, but have lower revenue per recipient because your actual amount of recipients that you're sending the emails to is expanded, and you're therefore spreading the money that's been driven from that. Hope that makes sense. If not, please join the weekly call. Thank you.